Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of the energy cycle, which involves the two processes of photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So if you look at these two processes, photosynthesis and cellular respiration, they can be referred to as a cycle because one process feeds into the other. So they're referred to as a cycle because the reactants and products of one process is connected to the other process. So we can see here with photosynthesis, the two reactants, the need of the plant, carbon dioxide and water, comes from the product of cell respiration, which is what's made in cell respiration, carbon dioxide and water. And the same thing goes for cellular respiration. So in order to do cellular respiration, which occurs in our cells, also in plant cells, we need glucose, C6H12O6, and oxygen, and both of those are products. They are made in the process of photosynthesis. Okay, the basics of photosynthesis are going to be detailed in this little video by your friends, my friends, the Amoeba Sisters. But basically, when we're talking about photosynthesis, and we look at the word photo. Photo means light. Synthesis means to make. So we're talking about the making of materials for energy by using sunlight. And where that happens in the chloroplast. You can see the little chloroplast here inside of the plant cells of anything that's green. So chlorophyll is a pigment inside of the membranes of certain areas inside of a chloroplast called a thylakoid that absorb energy from the sun and use that energy for the process of photosynthesis. And in that process, carbon dioxide and water are rearranged to produce carbohydrates, specifically glucose, C6H12O6, and oxygen. A couple other pictures here to look at. The xylem and the phloem of a plant. So the xylem is for carrying water from the roots up to the rest of the plant. And the phloem is for carrying the food. So that's a good way to remember which one's which. So the products of photosynthesis, carrying that to the rest of the plant. So again, if we look at reactants versus products. Reactants are materials that you need for a chemical reaction. And in this case, we need water and carbon dioxide. And if you look at this equation, this is an unbalanced chemical equation. In a balanced chemical equation, all of the elements that are on the left side, the reactant side, must equal to or be balanced with the number of elements on the right side. So when we're talking about the actual process of photosynthesis, plants need 6 carbon dioxide and 6 water molecules for this process, along with sunlight. And sometimes sunlight might be placed here above this arrow, this yield arrow. But sunlight is going to be used to split water, which those particles from splitting water, the H and the O, so 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen, will be used to combine with carbon dioxide to produce glucose, and then the oxygen from splitting of water is released through little pores on the underside of a leaf called the stomata. And the glucose is going to be stored in the plant. So when you consume a plant, you will be consuming this glucose, the C6H12O6. And how much oxygen produced? There are 6. So 6 carbon dioxide, 6 water yields 1 glucose molecule and 6 oxygen. So this is the chemical equation for photosynthesis. Now this process does occur, I mentioned, in the chloroplast. So here we see the chloroplast. These are the green structures inside of the plants, what gives plant its green color. They're located in the mesophyll, or the middle layer of a leaf. There are different parts of the chloroplast. Inside it, you'll see these green little discs. They're called thylakoids. These green discs are arranged in stacks called a granum. Now the word granum is singular. If I were referring to all of these stacks, I would say grana, that's plural. And then located around it is something very similar to cytoplasm. It's called the stroma. So there are two basic steps of photosynthesis. One step is generally referred to as the light-dependent reactions or the light reactions, and they occur in the thylakoid, because if you notice the thylakoid is green, and this green is because of the chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll absorbs all wavelengths of light except for green, and then it is reflected, so that's why it appears green. So the light-dependent reactions occur here, where the chlorophyll is that snags the energy from the sun and uses it to split water. The light-independent reactions are sometimes referred to as the dark reactions, occur here in the stroma that surrounds the thylakoids. Now, if you look at these structures a little bit more carefully, there's not a lot of waste in the process of photosynthesis. So the materials that are made in the thylakoids are then used in the stroma or released. So what's made here are going to be energy materials that will be used in the stroma, because the stroma, if you notice, it's not green, so it's not going to be using the energy from the sun. It has to have alternate energy sources, and those energy sources, which are called high electron energy carriers, are made here in the thylakoid, and then they're used here. They're used up, and then they'll go back into the thylakoid to be re-energized in the next photosynthesis chemical reaction. So what's made here is the oxygen that will be released, and then what's made here, actually the beginnings of glucose or carbohydrates. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause here to give you a chance to watch the video on photosynthesis and listen along to the little song that I found for you for photosynthesis, and then we'll come back to see what happens to the glucose, to the sugars that were made in photosynthesis, and the oxygen. What are we going to do with them?